Hana and Korak sat in the small meeting room on the Morning Star. The door was closed. Through the window, Hana could see her crew watching nervously. The cubs were pressed against the window too, their small faces worried. Korax looked at Hana for a long moment. Then he said, "Explain to me this word. Family. What does it mean?" Hana thought carefully about her answer. Family means people who care about each other, who protect each other not because they're ordered to, but because they want to. Family shares resources with the weak instead of taking them. Family teaches and helps each other grow. Family means you're never alone. Korax was quiet. He looked down at his large, scarred hands. In 3,000 years of Valthek history, he said slowly, we have conquered 60 worlds. We are the apex predators of the galaxy. Our empire spans a quarter of known space. We are feared everywhere we go. I know, Hana said. But I have never, Korax continued, his voice getting quieter, in all my years of service, in all my years of life, seen a Valthek care if another Valthek was injured.
I have never heard our young make sounds of joy.
I did not know we could laugh. I did not know we could be gentle. He looked up at Hana and there was pain in his eyes. You have shown me something I thought was impossible. Hana waited. Let him speak. I was raised like those cubs, Korak said. In a military creche. We were starved to make us vicious, beaten to make us hard, isolated to make us cruel. The weak ones died. The strong ones became warriors. That is the Valthek way. That has always been the Valthek way. But it doesn't have to be, Hana said gently. Korak stood up and walked to the window. He looked at the cubs. That small one, Nari. In a proper Valthek creche, they would have been killed in the first week. Too weak, too small, a waste of resources. He turned back to Hana. But you saved them. You made them strong in a different way. And now that weak cub stood between you and death without hesitation. Love makes us strong, Hana said. Real strength comes from having something worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth dying for. Your empire makes warriors through pain, but we make protectors through love. And there's a difference. Korax closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. Hana realized with shock that the Valthek commander was crying. You have shown me that my people have been destroying ourselves for 3,000 years, he said, his voice rough with emotion. We call ourselves warriors. We call ourselves strong, but we are broken. We break every generation and call it training. We create monsters and call it progress. He sat back down, suddenly looking very old and very tired. I had a cub once, he said quietly. Before I was a commander. Young Valthek can reproduce, though it's rare. The cub was small, weak. I was supposed to report it to be eliminated. But for one moment, one brief moment, I looked at that small creature and felt something. I didn't know what to call it then, but now I know. I felt what you humans call love. What happened? Hana asked softly. I was weak. I kept the cub secret for 3 days. I tried to help it grow stronger. But someone discovered it. The cub was eliminated, and I was punished for my weakness. They said I was becoming soft, ineffective. They made sure I would never feel that weakness again. He looked at his hands. Until today. Today I saw 12 cubs who should be weapons acting like children, and I felt that weakness again. That terrible, beautiful weakness. Hana reached across the table and placed her hand on Korax's arm. The commander flinched like he had never been touched gently before. Maybe he hadn't. It's not weakness, Hana said. It's the opposite. It's the bravest thing you can do. To care when you've been taught not to. To be gentle in a cruel world. To protect instead of destroy. Korax looked at her hand on his arm. What you've done with these cubs, he said. It changes everything. If they can learn this, if they can become this, then any Valthek can. Our whole society is built on a lie. The lie that we must be cruel to be strong. So what will you do? Hana asked. Korax was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I will report that the cubs were damaged beyond recovery, that they were eliminated according to protocol. I will file false records. I will commit treason against my empire. He looked at Hana. And then I will find other cubs. I will try to save them too. I will teach them what you taught these 12. It will be dangerous. Most of my kind will consider me an enemy, but I cannot unsee what I have seen today. Hana felt tears in her own eyes. Thank you. No, Korax said. Thank you. You have given me something I thought I lost forever. Hope. They returned to the cargo bay together. The cubs were huddled with the crew, everyone looking scared. When they saw Hana was okay, the cubs rushed to her. Nari reached her first and Hana picked up the small cub, holding them close. Korax watched this. Then he did something that made his soldiers gasp. He knelt down. He lowered himself to the cub's level, making himself small and non-threatening. "I am sorry," he said to them in Valthek, then repeated in standard Galactic. "I am sorry for what was done to you. I am sorry for what my people have become. You deserved better. All our cubs deserve better." The cubs didn't know what to say. They had never heard a Valthek adult apologize before. It wasn't a concept that existed in their experience. Quan stepped forward cautiously. "You not take us?" "No," Korax said. "You are free. You will stay with Hana and her crew. You will learn more about this thing called family, and maybe someday you will help me teach other cubs." Nari climbed down from Hana's arms and walked up to Korax. The tiny cub looked up at the massive warrior. Then Nari did something extraordinary. The small cub reached up and touched Korax's face right on his scarred cheek. It was the same gentle touch Hana had first shown them. "You sad," Nari said. "You hurt inside. Like we was, but can heal. We healing. You can too." Korax's hand came up slowly. He touched Nari's head, stroking the ridge above their eyes with one claw. It was clumsy and uncertain, but it was gentle. "Thank you, little one," he whispered. Before he left, Korax gave Hana codes and coordinates. "These are safe routes," he said. "Valthek patrols won't be in these sectors. Use them, keep the cubs safe." He paused. "And if you encounter any more of our young who need help, contact me. This is my personal frequency. I will come." "You're risking everything," Hana said. "I am saving everything that matters," Korax replied. "My empire can execute me, but they cannot kill hope. Not anymore." The Valthek soldiers left the ship. As their battlecruiser detached and moved away, Hana stood with her crew and the cubs watching it go. "What happens now?" Yuna asked. "Now we find a safe place for the cubs," Hana said. "We help them grow. We teach them more about being a family, and maybe if we're lucky, we save a few more along the way." Quan looked up at her. "We can help." "Help more cubs?" "When you're older and ready," Hana said. "Yes. You can help others the way you were helped." The cubs liked that idea. They began talking excitedly about it, about helping others, about spreading kindness. These children who had only known cruelty were now planning how to bring gentleness to others. Over the following weeks, the Morning Star traveled to a remote sanctuary world. It was a place where refugees and outcasts could live in peace. There, the crew began building something new, not just a home for 12 cubs, but a center for rescuing and helping traumatized young from all species. More people came to help. Scientists who wanted to study healing instead of weapons, teachers who wanted to educate instead of condition, medical staff who wanted to cure instead of experiment. The small operation grew, and far away in Valthek space, Commander Korax began his own quiet revolution. He found cubs being tortured in military creches. He rescued them when he could. He taught them about gentleness and family. It was slow work. It was dangerous work. Many considered him a traitor, but every cub he saved was a small victory. Every young Valthek who learned to laugh instead of just fight was proof that change was possible. 20 years passed. The 12 original cubs grew into adults. They were large and powerful like all Valthek. But they were different. They used their strength to protect, not to conquer. They became counselors and teachers and protectors. Quan led the security team for the sanctuary, keeping the vulnerable safe. Nari became a specialist in trauma recovery, helping other rescued young heal from abuse. The others each found their purpose, all rooted in the simple kindness first shown to them. The Morning Star had become a fleet of 30 vessels. Hana was older now, with gray in her hair and more scars from confrontations with those who hurt children. But she still led every rescue mission. She still sat with frightened young and showed them gentleness. She still believed that one act of kindness could change everything, and she was right. Because Korax's quiet revolution had grown, other Valthek warriors, seeing what the rescued cubs became, started to question their ways. Slowly, painfully slowly, parts of Valthek society began to change. It would take generations, maybe centuries. But the change had begun, all because a human woman named Hana saw 12 tortured cubs and decided to reach out her hand instead of turning away. All because she chose kindness when cruelty was expected. all because she knew that the smallest act of love could echo across the galaxy and change the course of civilizations. The dropship shook as it entered the atmosphere. Kian gripped his safety harness and watched through the viewport as red desert stretched out below. Kresh 9 looked like a nightmare. The survival test was simple. Last 72 hours alone on this death world and reach the extraction point 50 kilometers away. No weapons. No communication except for emergency beacons. Basic survival gear only. If you activated your beacon, you failed. If you didn't activate it and died, well, that was the risk. The Academy instructors had been clear. Kresh 9 was a genuine death world. Its ecosystem existed to kill. Only the strongest species attempted training here. Humans were not considered strong. The dropship's door opened. Wind screamed into the cabin. Kian checked his gear one last time. Water purifier, basic medical supplies, fire starter, knife, and rope. Nothing that would help against what lived on this planet. "Good luck, cadet," the pilot said. She was human too, one of the few in the Coalition fleet. "Don't be a hero. Use your beacon if you need to." Kian nodded and jumped. The fall lasted 5 seconds. His emergency chute deployed automatically, slowing his descent. He hit the red sand hard and rolled. The dropship was already gone, a distant speck in the orange sky. Silence. Then the wind picked up, carrying sand that stung his exposed skin. The temperature was already 45 degrees Celsius and the sun had only been up for 2 hours. By midday, it would reach 50 or higher. Kian pulled out his scanner and checked the terrain. The extraction point was northeast. Between here and there, desert, canyon lands, and something the scanner marked as extreme danger zone. He had no choice but to go through it. He started walking. The sand made every step difficult. Sweat soaked through his uniform within minutes. He rationed his water carefully, knowing he'd need to find more before the first day ended. By evening, Kian had covered 15 kilometers. His feet hurt, his skin was burned despite the protective clothing, and his water was half gone. But he was alive. He found shelter in a small cave as the sun set. The temperature dropped rapidly, going from 50 degrees to near freezing within an hour. Kian started a small fire using dried plant material and huddled close to it. That's when he saw the tracks. They were massive, 4-toed prints with claw marks that dug deep into the stone outside his cave. Each print was as long as Kian's forearm. Whatever made them was huge and heavy. Kian's training kicked in. He analyzed the tracks. The stride length suggested something that moved on 4 legs but could probably stand on 2. The claw marks were deep and sharp. A predator. A big one. He checked his database. The scanner identified them as Korthax tracks. The file that came up made Kian's blood run cold. Korthax were apex predators, 4 meters tall when standing upright. Armored hide that could stop most weapons. Pack hunters with intelligence that some xenobiologists believed approached sentience. The file also noted that Korthax had killed 37 cadets over the last decade. The Coalition used Kresh 9 with their permission, though no one understood why the Korthax allowed it. Maybe they found it entertaining. Kian didn't sleep that night. He kept his fire burning and his knife ready. Every sound in the darkness could be death approaching. Morning came. Kian moved on. The terrain changed from desert to canyon lands. Red rock formations towered around him, creating a maze of passages. The scanner helped, but it couldn't tell him everything. On the second day, the attacks began. First, it was small pack predators. Wolf-like creatures with 6 legs and crystal teeth. They surrounded Kian in a narrow canyon. He grabbed rocks and threw them, hitting one creature in the eye. He yelped and retreated. The others followed, not willing to fight something that fought back. Then came the flying creatures. Leathery wings and beaks like spears. They dove at Kian from above. He used his rope to create a whip, snapping it at them when they got too close. One got through and raked his shoulder with its talons. Pain exploded through his arm, but Kian kept moving. By the second night, he was exhausted. The wound on his shoulder was infected despite the medical supplies. He had found water but little food. His body was breaking down. That's when the Korthax found him. Kian had taken shelter in another cave. He was building a fire when he heard the sound, a low rumble like distant thunder. But there were no storms on Kresh 9. The rumble came again, closer. Kian grabbed his knife and stood. The fire cast dancing shadows on the cave walls. His heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. A shape appeared in the cave entrance. Massive, covered in dark scales that looked like armor plating. Yellow eyes that caught the firelight and reflected it back. The Korthax stood on 4 legs, its head nearly touching the cave ceiling. It was the most terrifying thing Kian had ever seen. The creature stepped forward. Kian could see details now, claws like curved swords, a mouthful of teeth designed to tear through flesh, muscles that rippled under the armored hide. "Stay back," Kian said, knowing it was useless. His knife would be like a toothpick against this thing. The Korthax tilted its head, studying him. Then it made a sound. Not a growl. Something else. Almost like speech, Kian's translator chip activated. The words came through broken and rough. Human. "You do not run," Kian blinked. The Korthax could talk? "Running just means dying tired," Kian said. His voice shook, but he kept the knife raised. The Korthax made a sound that might have been laughter. "Tired, yes." It moved closer and Kian tensed. "I am Ryuk, huntmaster of this territory. I watch the soft ones who come to die on my world." "I'm not here to die," Kian said. "No." Ryuk circled him slowly. "You are wounded, weak, alone. The night brings worse things than me. You will activate your beacon." "They all do." "No," Kian said. "I won't." Ryuk stopped circling. Those yellow eyes fixed on Kian with an intensity that made him want to look away. But he didn't. "Why?" Ryuk asked. "Because I came here to prove something. Giving up doesn't prove anything." Silence. The fire crackled. Outside, something howled in the distance. "You are foolish," Ryuk said finally. "But interesting. I offer you choice, small human. Activate your beacon now. Return to your people. Live as a failure, or," Kian asked, "or follow me. Face the true test, the trial of blood that my people use to separate hunters from prey." Ryuk's teeth showed in what might have been a smile. "Many Korthax die in this trial. You are smaller, weaker, you will probably not survive. But if I do, if you do, you earn respect. Not from your academy, from me, from my people." Ryuk leaned closer. "We do not give respect freely, human. We do not call others brother without cause. But if you pass the trial, you will have earned it." Kian thought about the academy, about Vorak's mockery, about all the species who saw humans as weak, as pets, as nothing worth respecting. He thought about Commander Yuna's words, about proving something important. He lowered his knife. "I'll follow you." Ryuk made that laughing sound again. "Good, then we begin. But first, your wound. You cannot hunt while dying of infection." The Korthax moved to the fire and pulled out a plant from the pouch at his side. He crushed it in his massive claws and held it out. "This will hurt, but it will clean the poison." Kian took the crushed plant and applied it to his shoulder. It burned like fire and he bit back a scream. Ryuk watched without sympathy. "Pain is a teacher," Ryuk said. "It teaches you what you can endure. Show me, human. Show me what you can endure." As the night wore on, Kian sat by the fire with a creature that could kill him with one swipe. But Ryuk didn't attack. Instead, he spoke of hunts and trials, of what it meant to be Korthax. And Kian listened, knowing that his real test was just beginning. Dawn came cold and red. Kian woke to find Ryuk already awake, standing at the cave entrance like a statue. The massive Korthax turned his head slightly when Kian stirred. "Your wound?" Ryuk asked. Kian checked his shoulder. The infection was gone. The medicine had worked, though the area was still tender. "Better, much better. Good, we move now. The trial ground is far and you are slow." They traveled deeper into the canyonlands. Ryuk moved with surprising grace for something so large. His clawed feet found purchase on rocks that Kian struggled to climb. Several times Ryuk had to wait for the human to catch up, but the Korthax didn't complain. Instead he taught. "See those marks on the stone?" Ryuk pointed with one claw. Razorwing nests nearby. They scratched territory markers. 3 parallel lines. Always 3. Kian looked at the scratches. He memorized the pattern. And here, Ryuk stopped by a cluster of bones. Sandcrawler feeding ground. They hunt at night. During day, they sleep under the sand. Step wrong, they wake angry. Every kilometer brought new lessons. How to read the wind for water sources, which plants were edible and which would kill within minutes. How to move silently across loose rock. The language of predators and prey. "Why are you teaching me this?" Kian asked during a brief rest. "If I die in the trial, you lose nothing. If I survive, you gain nothing." Ryuk settled onto his haunches. "Wrong. If you die like fool, you waste my time." If you die like Hunter, you honor the trial. I teach you so your death has meaning. He paused. Or so your survival means something. They reached the trial ground by midday. It was a vast circular canyon, walls rising high on all sides. The floor was scattered with bones from hundreds of kills. The sky above was open, which Kian realized was important. The razor wing hunts here, Ryuk explained. It is territory as this canyon and the cliffs above. You must hunt it and kill it. Kian looked up at the cliffs. They were easily 100 meters high. Tell me about razor wings, Ryuk settled down to explain. Razorwings were flying predators with wingspans of 6 meters. Their talons were diamond hard and could slice through stone. They could sense fear through bioelectric fields that all living creatures produced. When prey was afraid, the razorwing became more aggressive. Korthak's young faced this trial at 5 seasons old, Ryuk said. Many die. Those who survive become hunters. Those who die become food. And humans? Kian asked. No human has ever attempted this trial. You will be the first. Ryuk stood and moved toward the canyon entrance. I will wait here. You have until sunset. If the razorwing kills you, I will carry your bones back to your people. If you kill it, we will feast together as brothers. Wait, Kian said. What weapons do I use? Ryuk gestured at the canyon floor. What you find. What you make. A hunter uses everything. He fixed Kian with those yellow eyes. One more thing, human. The razorwing will sense your fear. It will use that fear against you. You cannot defeat it by being unafraid. That is impossible. You must defeat it by being afraid and acting anyway. You understand? Kian nodded slowly. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Yes, courage is fear that has found purpose. Ryuk turned away. Hunt well, small brother. Or die well. Either brings honor. Then the Korthax was gone and Kian was alone in the canyon of bones. He took a deep breath and began to work. First he gathered materials. Bones could be weapons and tools. He found a long leg bone from some large creature and broke it to create a sharp point. Another bone became a club. He used his rope to create a simple snare. Next he studied the terrain. The canyon had several large rock formations that could provide cover. There were also crevices and caves where something small like him could hide. The razorwing was big and needed space to maneuver. That was a weakness he could exploit. Kian found a narrow passage between 2 rocks. It was barely wide enough for him to fit through. The razorwing couldn't follow him there. He set up his first trap, a snare made of rope and a tripwire that would trigger if something passed through. Then he waited. The sun moved slowly across the sky. Sweat dripped down Kian's face. His heart hammered in his chest. Every sound made him jump, but he forced himself to stay calm, to think, to plan. The razorwing came as the sun began its descent. Kian heard it first, the sound of wings cutting through air. Then he saw it. A massive creature with leathery wings stretched wide. Its body was sleek and muscular. The talons gleamed like polished metal. And its eyes locked onto Kian immediately. It dove. Kian ran, not away from the creature but toward his trap. The razorwing followed, its wings creating wind that kicked up dust and bones. Kian could feel it behind him, getting closer. He dove through the narrow passage. The razorwing couldn't follow but slashed at him with one talon. The blade-like claw missed Kian's leg by centimeters and struck rock instead, sending sparks flying. The creature screamed in rage and flew upward to circle and attack again. Kian's hands shook. His fear was a living thing in his chest, trying to paralyze him. But he couldn't let it. He moved to the next position where he'd prepared another surprise. The razorwing came again. This time it landed on a rock formation and folded its wings. It studied Kian with intelligence that was terrifying. This wasn't just a beast. It was a hunter, like Ryuk had said. It was learning from the first attack. They stared at each other across the canyon floor. Kian held his bone spear. The razorwing flexed its talons. Then it charged, using its powerful legs to run across the ground. Kian stood his ground until the last possible second, then dove aside. The razorwing's talons struck where he'd been standing, but its momentum carried it forward into the tripwire. The snare activated, pulling tight around one of the creature's legs. It wasn't strong enough to hold the razorwing, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to tangle the creature for a few seconds. Kian struck. He drove his bone spear toward the razorwing's side, aiming for the gap between its armored scales. The spear penetrated and the creature screamed. It twisted, breaking the snare, and one wing caught Kian in the chest. He flew backward and hit rock hard enough to drive the air from his lungs. Pain exploded through his body. The Razorwing limped toward him, wounded but far from defeated. Blood dripped from its side, but its eyes burned with rage. Kian couldn't breathe. His ribs were probably broken. The bone club had fallen from his hand. He was going to die here. But then he thought of Vorak's mockery, of every species that looked at humans and saw weakness, of Commander Yuna's belief in him, of Ryuk's words about courage and fear. He grabbed a handful of sand and threw it at the Razorwing's eyes. The creature reared back, temporarily blinded. Kian forced himself to stand despite the pain. He grabbed the bone club and charged. The Razorwing sensed him coming and slashed blindly. One talon caught Kian's arm, opening a deep cut. But Kian was inside its guard now, too close for the wings to be effective. He swung the club with everything he had left. The club struck the Razorwing's head with a crack that echoed through the canyon. The creature stumbled. Kian hit it again, and again. Each impact sent pain shooting through his broken ribs, but he didn't stop. The Razorwing tried to fly away, but its injured leg failed. It fell. Kian was on it immediately, driving the broken spear into its throat. The creature thrashed once, twice, and then went still. Kian collapsed next to it, gasping for air. Blood covered his arms and chest, some his, some the Razorwing's. His vision blurred. He might have broken more than just ribs, but he was alive, and the Razorwing was dead. Well done, small brother. Kian turned his head. Ryuk stood at the canyon entrance. The massive Korthax walked forward slowly, his eyes on the fallen Razorwing. When he reached Kian, he placed one clawed hand gently on the human's uninjured shoulder. You hunted. You killed. You earned this. Ryuk pulled something from his pouch. It was a talon, carved with symbols that glowed faintly in the fading light. This is mark of Korthax. It says you are hunter. It says you are brother. He pressed the talon into Kian's hand. Welcome, brother Kian, Ryuk said in his own language, the translator rendering it with weight and ceremony. The galaxy calls your people weak, but I have seen your strength. It is not strength of body. It is strength of will that does not break. Kian clutched the talon and closed his eyes. Pain washed over him in waves. But beneath the pain was something else. Pride. Not arrogance, but the quiet satisfaction of proving something to himself. He had passed the trial. The extraction shuttle arrived at dawn. Kian barely remembered the journey back to the academy. Ryuk had carried him to the landing zone, treated his wounds with Korthax medicine, and waited until the shuttle appeared. Before leaving, the Huntmaster had spoken one final time. Remember, brother Kian, the mark you carry will change things. Some will honor it. Others will hate you for it. Stay strong. Now Kian stood in the academy's courtyard. He was 73 hours late. Every other cadet had returned within the time limit or activated their emergency beacon. According to academy protocols, Kian should be listed as failed or dead. Instead, he walked through the main gates with his gear on his back and the Korthax honor mark in his hand. The courtyard went silent. Cadets from dozens of species stopped what they were doing and stared. Word spread like fire. The human survived. He's carrying something. Is that a Korthax mark? Vorak pushed through the crowd. The big Drakesh's eyes went wide when he saw the carved talon. Impossible, he breathed. That can't be real. Commander Yuna appeared, accompanied by several senior officers. Her face remained calm, but Kian saw surprise in her eyes. She stepped forward and examined the mark carefully. Where did you get this, cadet? Huntmaster Ryuk gave it to me, Kian said. His voice was rough from dehydration and exhaustion. After I completed the trial of blood, the courtyard erupted. Cadets shouted questions. Officers demanded explanations. Silene pushed forward, its crystalline body shimmering with agitation. The trial of blood is a Korthax ritual. They don't share it with outsiders. They never have. Scan the mark, Commander Yuna said calmly. A technician came forward with equipment. After a moment, he looked up with disbelief on his face. It's authentic, Commander. The molecular markers match known Korthax artifacts and the age. This was carved recently within the last day. The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, Commander Yuna spoke. Cadet Kian, you'll come with me. Medical examination first, then debriefing. She glanced at the crowd. The rest of you return to your duties now. The medical bay confirmed what Kian already knew. 3 broken ribs, multiple lacerations, severe bruising across his chest and back, minor infection in several wounds. The doctors treated him with healing technology that accelerated his recovery, but they kept shaking their heads. How did you survive with these injuries? One doctor asked. Most species would have gone into shock. I didn't have a choice, Kian said simply. The debriefing took hours. Kian told them everything. The meeting with Ryuk, the lessons, the trial, the fight with the Razor Wing. Commander Yuna listened without interrupting. When he finished, she studied him for a long moment. Do you understand what this means? She asked quietly. The Korthax have existed for thousands of years. They've had contact with the Coalition for 2 centuries. In all that time, they've never honored an outsider. Never called anyone brother. You've done something unprecedented. I just survived, Kian said. No, you did more than survive. You earned their respect, and in doing so, you've changed how the galaxy might view humanity. She leaned forward. But not everyone will be happy about this. Prepare yourself. She was right. The news spread across the entire coalition within days. The Korthax honor mark became the subject of intense debate. Some species were impressed, others were skeptical, and a few were openly hostile. Ambassador Thex of the Drakesh Empire was the loudest voice against it. He appeared on every news channel, giving interviews, making statements. His message was always the same. Humans were manipulators, not warriors. Kian must have cheated somehow. The Korthax were deceived. The Drakesh have built their reputation over millennia, Thex said in one broadcast. We are the Coalition's premier warriors. And now we're supposed to believe that a human, a species that's been in space for barely 15 years, has earned what we could not. It's absurd. Within a week, the Coalition Council summoned both Kian and Ryuk to testify. It was unprecedented. The Korthax rarely left their homeworld and never involved themselves in Coalition politics. But Ryuk accepted the summons. I will speak for my brother, he sent in his message. And the council will listen. The council chamber was the largest room Kian had ever seen. It was a perfect circle, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from 43 species filled those seats. At the highest tier sat the 5 council leaders who made final decisions on coalition matters. Kian stood on the central platform. He wore his academy uniform and carried nothing except the honor mark, which hung from a cord around his neck. Commander Yuna stood nearby as his advocate, as academy regulations required. Ambassador Thex spoke first. His voice boomed through the chamber. We are here because a human cadet claims to have earned a Korthax honor mark. The Korthax are fierce warriors. We respect them. But we also know they are isolationist and unpredictable. How do we know this mark is genuine? How do we know the human didn't steal it? Or that this isn't some Korthax joke? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Several species nodded. The Drakesh had allies here. Then the chamber doors opened. Ryuk entered, and the entire room went silent. The Huntmaster was even more impressive here than he'd been in the canyons of Kresh 9. His armored scales gleamed under the chamber lights. His yellow eyes swept across the assembled species with the gaze of a true apex predator. He walked to the platform and stood beside Kian. The contrast was stark. The massive Korthax and the comparatively small human, predator and prey. Yet Ryuk placed one clawed hand on Kian's shoulder in a gesture of unmistakable support. I am Ryuk, Huntmaster of the Red Canyon Territory, his voice rumbled. The translators rendered his words in dozens of languages simultaneously. I have walked the blood paths for 300 cycles. I have seen warriors from every corner of this galaxy. He paused, letting his words sink in. Most of you know Korthax as fighters, as predators. You respect our strength, but you do not understand us. Ryuk's eyes fixed on Ambassador Thex. You, Drakesh, your people are strong. You have mighty warriors. But when your warriors come to my world for training, what do I see? I see fighters who expect to win because they are strong. I see pride. I see arrogance. Thex started to protest, but Ryuk continued, his voice cutting through any objection. This human came to my world. He was wounded, weak. He should have activated his beacon and accepted failure, but he did not. He asked to face the trial of blood. Ryuk's hand tightened slightly on Kian's shoulder. I have watched many cadets over the years. When they face death, they reveal their true nature. Some beg, some flee. Some fight with skill but no heart. He turned to look at Kian. This one fought because he refused to be anything less than what he chose to be. 3 broken ribs, deep wounds, a creature twice his size. And he did not stop, he did not quit. He won. Ryuk faced the council leaders. You call humans weak. I call them survivors. You mock their fragility. I honor their unbreakable spirit. You ask if the mark is real? Yes. You ask if he earned it? Yes. You ask if I call him brother? Ryuk's teeth showed in a fierce smile. I call him brother, not because he is strong in body, but because he is strong where it matters. In will. In determination. In the refusal to surrender. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of technology. Finally, one of the council leaders spoke. She was an elder Vexir, her crystalline body showing patterns of great age. Huntmaster Ryuk, your words carry weight. But you must understand our concern. The Korthax have never honored an outsider before. Why now? Why this human? Ryuk considered the question. Because it is time. You grow soft, Council. Your warriors train for glory, not survival. You fight with technology and forget what it means to hunt with nothing but yourself. This human reminded me of what warriors should be. Not the strongest, not the fastest, but the ones who refuse to break. He removed his hand from Kian's shoulder and addressed the entire chamber. The mark I gave is genuine. The trial was passed fairly. And if any here doubt this, I invite you to Kresh 9. Take the trial of blood yourself, then tell me the human did not earn his place. No one accepted the challenge. Ambassador Thex looked furious, but he had no response. How could he argue with a huntmaster who had stood witness? How could he challenge a trial that had killed Korthax younglings and battle-hardened warriors alike? The council leaders conferred among themselves. Finally, the elder Vexir spoke again. The council accepts the testimony of Huntmaster Ryuk. Cadet Kian's honor is confirmed. Furthermore, we acknowledge that humanity has produced at least one warrior worthy of galactic respect. She paused, and her next words changed everything. We hereby remove humanity from the protected species list. They will be considered full military partners in the coalition. Kian felt his legs weaken. Protected species status had kept humans safe but inferior. Now they would be equals. It meant opportunity. It also meant responsibility. Commander Yuna smiled slightly from where she stood. Around the chamber, reactions varied. Some species applauded, others looked concerned. The Drakesh delegation sat in angry silence. But it was done. One human, one trial. One honor mark had shifted the galaxy's perception. As they left the council chamber, Ryuk walked beside Kian. You know what comes next, brother? What? Kian asked. 6 months had passed since the council hearing. Kian was no longer just a cadet. He had graduated early, promoted to junior officer and assigned to Rapid Response Unit Talon. It was an elite team, composed of the coalition's best fighters from various species. His squad included 3 other humans now. Jihoon was a tactical specialist, quiet and analytical. Sora was their medic and explosives expert, small but fierce. Hyun was their heavy weapons operator, built like a tank by human standards. They had all followed Kian's example, pushing themselves beyond what others expected. But the galaxy was about to test them all. The Skrell Dominion had been quiet for decades. They were a rival power, existing outside coalition space. The Skrell were biomechanical beings, part organic and part machine. They saw organic life as inefficient and imperfect. Rumors said they wanted to improve the galaxy, one species at a time. The attack came without warning. Skrell forces hit 3 coalition border colonies simultaneously. The strikes were surgical and devastating. Defensive stations were destroyed within hours. Civilian populations were trapped. The coalition scrambled to respond. Rapid response units were deployed immediately. Unit Talon received their orders. Hold the colony of New Havana until civilian evacuation was complete. Expected time 12 hours. Expected enemy forces overwhelming. The dropship carried Unit Talon toward the colony. Kian checked his weapons for the third time. Beside him, Ryuk cleaned his claws with the same casual attention. The Huntmaster had volunteered for this mission, claiming the right to fight beside his brother. It had caused a stir. The Korthaks never fought for the coalition. They remained neutral, preferring their isolated world. But Ryuk had been clear. This wasn't about the coalition. This was about brotherhood. You are nervous, Ryuk observed. Yes, Kian admitted. This is different from training. People will die if we fail. People will die regardless, Ryuk said. The question is whether they die meaningfully. We give them time to escape. That is meaningful. He placed a claw on Kian's shoulder. You have faced death before, brother. This is the same. Just bigger. The dropship shook as it entered the combat zone. The pilot's voice crackled over the speakers. 30 seconds to drop. Skrell forces have taken the eastern sector. Civilians are evacuating from the western spaceport. Your objective is to hold the central junction. Good luck, the door opened. Kian jumped into hell. New Havana was burning. Buildings collapsed under Skrell weapons fire. The enemy forces moved with mechanical precision. Their biomechanical bodies resistant to most weapons. They looked like humans who had been rebuilt with metal and circuitry. Efficient but inhuman. Unit Talon landed in the central junction, a wide plaza that connected all major routes to the spaceport. If the Skrell took this position, they could cut off the evacuation. It couldn't fall. The coalition forces were already there. Drakesh warriors held defensive positions. Vexor coordinators managed artillery placements. A unit of Thryn soldiers secured the perimeter, and leading them was Vorak. The Drakesh warrior saw Kian and nodded. There was no mockery in his eyes now, only grim determination. About time you showed up. The Skrell are pushing hard from the east. We've held them for 2 hours, but we're running low on ammunition. How many? Kian asked. They outnumber us 5-1, and they don't get tired or scared. Vorak's eyes shifted to Ryuk. The Huntmaster's presence is welcome, Ryuk growled. Where do I kill them? Vorak almost smiled. Everywhere. The battle began within minutes. Skrell forces advanced in perfect formation, their weapons cutting through barriers like paper. They moved with efficiency, exploiting every weakness. This wasn't just an army. It was a machine designed to conquer. Kian and his human squad took position at the junction's eastern entrance. Jehun set up sensor equipment to track enemy movements. Sora prepared medical stations. Hyun mounted his heavy plasma cannon on a reinforced barrier. Remember your training, Kian told them. We can't match them in strength or numbers, so we match them in stubbornness. We make every meter they advance cost them. The first Skrell wave hit like a hammer. Energy weapons lit up the plaza. Kian fired his rifle in controlled bursts, aiming for joints and visual sensors. The Skrell were tough, but they weren't invincible. Enough damage would bring them down. Beside him, Ryuk fought with savage grace. His claws tore through Skrell armor. His teeth crushed circuitry. He moved like death itself, and the Skrell learned to fear him. But there were so many. For every enemy that fell, 2 more appeared. The defensive line began to buckle. West barrier is failing, someone shouted over the communications channel. We need reinforcements. No reinforcements available, came the reply. Hold your positions. Kian saw Sora take a hit. The blast caught her in the leg and she went down. Jehun dragged her to cover while still firing. Hyun's cannon overheated and shut down. They were losing. Then Kian heard a sound he'd never forget. A Skrell war machine broke through the eastern entrance. It was 4 meters tall, heavily armored with enough firepower to level buildings. Its sensors locked onto Ryuk, identifying the Huntmaster as the primary threat. Ryuk roared and charged. The war machine fired energy beams scorching the air, but Ryuk was fast, dodging between shots. He leaped, claws extended, and hit the machine's torso. Metal screamed as he ripped into it. But the machine was strong. It grabbed Ryuk with one massive arm and threw him into a building. The structure collapsed and Ryuk didn't emerge. No! Kian ran toward the wreckage. The war machine turned its weapons toward him. This was it. He couldn't dodge at this range. Vorak's voice boomed across the plaza. If the human and the Huntmaster can hold, so can we. All units, reinforce the eastern entrance now. The Drakesh warrior charged, followed by his entire unit. Other species joined them. The Vexer redirected artillery. The Thryn soldiers abandoned their positions to support the eastern line. The entire defensive force converged on one point. The war machine fired at Kian. He dove, feeling the heat pass over his back. Then he was up running, climbing onto the machine's leg. It was insane. It was desperate. It was the only chance. He reached the machine's torso and found the access panel Jehun had mentioned in briefings. He pulled out a plasma charge, one of Sora's special modifications, and jammed it into the panel. The machine tried to shake him off. Its arm reached for him. Then the charge detonated. The explosion threw Kian across the plaza. He hit the ground hard, his ears ringing. When his vision cleared, the war machine was on its knees, sparking and dying, and from the rubble, Ryuk emerged. The Huntmaster was bleeding from several wounds, but he was alive. He looked at Kian and made that laughing sound. "Stupid, brother. Brave, but stupid." "Learn from the best," Kian said, struggling to his feet. The battle raged for another 6 hours. The Skrell kept coming and the defenders kept holding. Slowly the tide turned. With the war machine destroyed, the coalition forces could focus on the smaller units. Ammunition was shared. Wounded were treated, and everyone fought like tomorrow might not come. Finally, the last evacuation ship lifted off from the spaceport. The civilian population was safe. The mission was complete. "All units fall back to extraction points," the order came. "Well done." The survivors gathered in the plaza. More than half their number had fallen. The buildings around them were ruins. But they had held. They had won. Vorak approached Kian. The Drakesh was covered in burns and cuts. "I owe you an apology, human. I called you weak once. I called you a pet. I was wrong. We all fought," Kian said. "That's what matters." "No, you fought differently." Vorak looked around at the assembled forces. "We fight because we're strong. You fight because you refuse to lose. There's a difference. Today, you showed us that difference." Other soldiers nodded in agreement. The Vexer commander approached. The human tactics were effective. Unconventional but effective. "Perhaps we have much to learn from your species." Ryuk placed his hand on Kian's shoulder. "Today many saw what I saw in Kresh 9. Your people are not the weakest species. You are survivors who do not know how to quit. That makes you dangerous. That makes you worthy." The Huntmaster raised his voice so all could hear. "I call this human brother." Today he proved why. And I say this to all who hear. Terrans are not strong because of their bodies. They are strong because surrender is not in their nature. Remember this. Honor this. The assembled forces representing dozens of species showed their respect in their own ways. The Drakesh raised their weapons in salute. The Vexer created light patterns of acknowledgement. The Thryn clicked their mandibles in approval. For the first time, humanity stood as equals among the stars. Weeks later, Kian returned to Earth briefly. He walked through the streets of Seoul, his hometown. Children played in parks. People went about their lives unaware of how much had changed above their heads. His communication device chimed. It was Commander Yuna, now Admiral Yuna after her promotion. Her message was brief. "Recruitment numbers are up 300%. Hundreds of young humans want to join the coalition military. They want to be like you, like us. The galaxy is watching, Kian. We showed them what we're capable of. Now we have to keep proving it." Kian looked up at the evening sky. Somewhere up there, Ryuk was returning to Kresh 9.